And now to our interview segment. My guest, Judge Etomi, is the pioneer chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association's section on business law. Mr. Etomi has extensive experience in commercial transactions and has worked with local and international clients in matters of telecommunications, oil and gas, energy and natural resources, to mention a few. He's a member of the Center for Petroleum Law Research and has worked over the years with numerous multinational companies, oftentimes serving as a mediator and champion for the cause and the rights of the oil-producing states. In this interview, we talk about some of the challenges of the post-privatized power sector, the litigations, the opportunities, and possible solutions. So much has been said about power. It's now being privatized and a whole lot of issues are coming to the fore. But how are the privatized entities working with the regulators to realize the whole intention of this privatization exercise?
The entire privatization thing is protected by a system of different kinds of regulators to ensure that the right balance occurs within the sector. The overall regulator, the main regulator, is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. That's the one that oversees and superintends the entire power industry. They were set up by law. The chief executive and the directors are usually approved by the National Assembly upon nomination by the executive arm of government. So they are basically protected. And then there's the BP. The BP were the ones, as you could see, who midwifed the privatization. They hold, on behalf of the federal government, the 40% federal government interest in each of these privatized entities. And so there are certain rules they're expected to play. And then apart from that, you have municipal regulators, such as the state governments and other players around. Now, what this whole system of regulation is designed to do is to help the privatized entities, keep them on the straight and narrow, so that within their profit motive, they're able to deliver the intended service. And the way that is done is through a system of carefully worked out regulations which govern their activities. So in some cases, it's a smooth relationship. In many cases, it's rough, and that's to be expected. Because take NEC, for example. NEC stands in this uncomfortable situation of trying to protect, let me say, the vulnerable public. And at the same time, it is expected to enforce its rules or bring rules that enables the privatized entities realize their investments, because they are not there just to serve the public without getting some reasonable profit back. It is maintaining that careful balance, and that has shown up in so many debates, I'm sure, which you've been following, principle of which is the tariffs. The way tariffs are worked out is through a very carefully worked out model called the multi-year tariff order. This is usually issued by the regulator, NEC, but NEC just doesn't do it. It is actually originated by the DISCOs, who would have looked at a number of the operating circumstances around them and then suggest a tariff. NEC then takes this suggestion and then makes a countrywide consultation about whether the tariff increase should go or shouldn't go. And based on input they get from various stakeholders, they can then issue, that's why it's an order. And each time you have one review, which often the major review, it is there for 10 years. Although you can then look at it, it's broken into 5-yearly segments. But within each year, you have what they call minor reviews. And those minor reviews take things like inflation, exchange rates, those things that regularly change into consideration. In so doing, most of the, let me say, we're trying to smoothen out the rough edges. And in some cases, they are really very rough. For example, there is this concept of the transition electricity market, TEM, which one of the regulators I didn't talk about was NBET, the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. What the TEM is supposed to do is to move the entire electricity market to the point where it becomes free in determining tariffs between the discos, and then the discos, when they collect whatever revenues that come about it, the GENCOs get fully paid. Now, NBET, the bulk trader, stays in between to ensure that this intention is faithfully kept.
You've talked about some of the frictions that are now coming to the fore, and one of those, the ones we're seeing, is the one between the NERC and NBET on one hand, and the discos on the other hand. The discos have already gone to court to challenge the declaration of TEM, but what do you think that they're trying to achieve?
Well, the gripe of the discos, just to sort of break it down, as I told you, the bulk trader gets power from the GENCOs, purchases power, and then he gives to the discos. The bulk trader expects that the discos will pay for it so that he in turn can pay the GENCOs. But to ensure that happens, they require the discos to put up LCs, which they can call on in the event that there is a shortfall.
The letters of credit.
The letters of credit, so that there is a shortfall. The problem here is that the discos are saying, fair enough that you want to do that, but our inability, when you give us power and we distribute, we're not able to collect all the money based on the payments we received. And it's very simple, and they tell you, for example, the ministries, department, and agencies don't pay and have not paid for a long time. So how are we expected to allow our LCs be called in for non-collection of those tariffs? What do we do? Let's not also forget that when you keep saying you give power, the power you give is itself unreliable. First of all, you're not even meeting the baseline power you're supposed to give to us when the privatization took place, which was 5,000 megawatts. Owing to twin issues of vandalization of the pipelines and the shaky gas policy that we have, we don't get the GENCOs. Most of their turbines are lying idle because they don't get the gas, which is a feedstock, to fire them. So when they don't have that, they don't generate enough power. And even when they do, there is a problem of the robustness of the transmission lines. The transmission lines are antiquated. They can only take so much. So ultimately, what comes to the discos for distribution is in some cases just management stuff. And it's important for consumers to understand it, because the practical issue they have on ground is that when you don't give people power, and then at the end of the month you take a bill to them, some angry ones just basically chase you out. Even if you're going to put him an invoice for 8 days, he's so upset with having to pay so much for a generator. So those create collection difficulties. There are discos who, because of the area they operate in, simply just can't get tariffs. In fact, I think it's a Benin disco. Some parts of the area that they serve, the warlords there, the militant, just basically don't even bother to come and collect. Even in the urban areas, there are some areas you can't even go and collect. So what the discos are saying is that, be it NEC, be it NBET, they must recognize these real difficulties before you want to clamp on the LC for 100% of your payment. So this is what they've referred for adjudication. Hopefully, it doesn't really require the courts to pronounce on it. If we can get some kind of resolution by negotiations, it's even better. But in all of these, if one has to think optimistically, it shows what the whole privatization was designed to do is being achieved, because market forces are slowly beginning to determine prices. And this is really where we should all be slowly going to.